It is genuinely wild to watch the incredibly fast-paced world of artificial intelligence just completely collide with the heavily structured, high-stakes environment of the federal legal
Oh,
system.
absolutely. It's a massive culture clash.
Right. And usually when we see these two domains intersect, it ends up making headlines for um, all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, the disaster stories.
Exactly. Like a litigant feeds unredacted, highly sensitive case details into some public AI chatbot just to get help writing a brief. And without even realizing it, they've just handed over private legal strategy or, confidential medical records to a public server.
It's a complete data privacy nightmare.
It really is. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone, because today we are unpacking exactly that tension.
And honestly, it is like trying to perform delicate surgery using a chainsaw. I mean, we have this wildly powerful generative engine, right? But for the average person, there is zero instruction manual on how to constrain that power.
Which is terrifying.
It really is. That is particularly dangerous when the outputs have real-world binding consequences in a federal court.
Right. And that brings us to the actual material we are looking at today. We've got this fascinating stack of project design documents that track the evolution of something called the Civil Rights Prompt Commons.
Yeah, the prompt commons. It's a brilliant case study.
What makes this so compelling for you and me to look at is that we aren't just reviewing some glossy marketing brochure for a finished product.
No, not at all. We get the messy behind-the-scenes stuff.
Exactly. We are tracing the internal architecture from a really rough conceptual draft all the way to a highly disciplined V1.2 execution blueprint. We even have access to the AI feedback logs the creators use to stress test their own framework.
Which is just a remarkably pragmatic way to build. I mean, they deliberately tried to break their own system to find the privacy leaks before they ever even considered opening the doors to users.
Right. So let's talk about the mission here. It's highly specific and very ambitious. They are designing an AI-driven grafting framework for pro se plaintiffs.
Right, citizens representing themselves.
Exactly. People who have to navigate complex federal courts entirely without a lawyer. And more specifically, they are targeting citizens filing Section 1983 complaints.
Which are the federal civil rights lawsuits against government officials.
Yep. So the core question we are exploring today with you is, how do you build a system that helps a citizen format their raw evidence using AI without ever exposing that sensitive data to the internet?
And the challenge there is immense. I mean, a plaintiff in a civil rights case is invariably dealing with volatile material. We are talking about police incident reports, medical evaluation.
Internal dispatch logs, yeah.
Exactly. And the natural instinct for someone overwhelmed by legal formatting is to just copy and paste that raw text into a public AI prompt and say, hey, turn this into a lawsuit.
Which is the chainsaw surgery you mentioned.
Right. And doing that breaches their own privacy. It waives potential protections, and it can outright violate federal court rules regarding sensitive information.
So to solve that, the designers established this foundational philosophy right at the beginning of the project. They call it the source-locked setup.
The source-locked setup, yes. This is crucial.
And the fundamental golden rule here is prompts are public, but evidence is private. Only sanitized hypotheticals are ever allowed to cross the wall between the two.
Right. What's fascinating here is how phase one of their design actually implements that rule, because it is incredibly strict.
How so?
Well, they entirely abandoned the idea of building a centralized software platform. A place where users create an account and upload their file.
Oh, so no giant public platform at all?
None. Instead, they architected three completely distinct operational spaces. First, there's the public prompt library. That is the repository for the AI instructions, basically the templates.
And there's no actual facts there.
Zero. Zero factual evidence stored there. Then second, there is the private vault. That is where the user's actual case files reside, strictly offline or in a secure encrypted drive.
Okay, so library and vault.
Right. And finally, there is the sanitized sandbox. That serves as the operational bridge where a user learns how to convert their private facts into anonymous, stripped-down patterns before they ever open an AI tool.
I love this. It's like using a public library to learn the mechanics of finance, right? But keeping your actual gold bars in a private bank vault across town.
That is a perfect analogy.
You don't haul your physical gold bars into the library to read the textbook. You learn the concepts at the library, and then you apply that knowledge securely back at the vault.
That is exactly it. It's a brilliant way to visualize the mechanism. The separation forces the user to physically and mentally decouple the drafting tool from the raw material.
Which is so needed.
Right. And the design documents anchor this approach in the Federal Trade Commission's core security guidance, which is collect only what you need, protect what you keep, and limit access.
So the Prompt Commons project isn't trying to act as a secure host for citizens' data at all.
No, not at all. They are structurally demanding that users keep their data to themselves.
Okay, so let's look at the actual nuts and bolts of keeping those spaces separate. Because knowing you need a library and a vault is easy in theory.
Oh, sure. But building them is a different story.
Right. Actually building them so users don't accidentally mix them up on their own laptops is really difficult. And the project documents reveal a major pivot in how they built the, what they call the public front door.
Yes, the GitHub decision.
Yeah, they decided to host the prompt library on GitHub. Now, I have to stop you there because I am looking at this from the perspective of an average citizen, right?
But GitHub is intimidating.
It is. GitHub is a platform built by and for software developers. It relies on code repositories, branching, pull requests. I mean, doesn't utilizing a developer platform create a massive technical barrier to entry for someone just trying to format a civil rights complaint?
It sounds like it would, yes.
Why not just host the prompts on a simple public Google Doc?
The friction you were pointing out was clearly a major debate among the designers, but the V1.1 upgrade notes reveal the primary reason they chose GitHub over a simpler alternative.
And what was that?
Transparent, auditable moderation. A public Google Doc or a standard web forum is highly vulnerable. It can descend into chaos so quickly.
Oh, I see. Someone could accidentally paste their unredacted police report directly into the shared document.
Exactly. Or malicious actors could intentionally alter the legal standards written into the prompts.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would ruin the whole tool.
Right. But GitHub prevents that through version control.
Right.
If a user wants to suggest a better way to format a discovery request, they submit what is called a pull request.
Which means? Right.
That means the change doesn't go live immediately. It sits in a queue. It must be manually reviewed by the maintainers.
Okay, so there's a gatekeeper.
Always.
Mhm.
Furthermore, GitHub maintains an immutable changelog. So if a bad edit somehow bypasses the review, the maintainers can roll the entire repository back to a known safe state with a single click.
Okay, I understand the security argument, but if I'm a pro se plaintiff who doesn't know how to code, submitting a pull request sounds incredibly intimidating. Does the project address how normal people are actually supposed to interact with this?
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
They build a bridge. They use a simple static landing page. They suggest a platform like Card or GitHub Pages.
Ah,
This acts as the user-friendly storefront. So the citizen reads the plain English instructions on the landing page, and they simply copy the text of the prompt.
so they don't even see the code side of things.
Never. They never actually have to interact with the back-end GitHub mechanics unless they actively want to contribute to the project's development. The friction is placed solely on the contributors, not the end users.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. The storefront is simple, but the warehouse is heavily guarded. Now, regarding the private vault, where the user's actual evidence lives, the V1.1 upgrade instituted a strict mandate. If a user stores their case files digitally, the project requires them to use end-to-end encryption, or E2E, utilizing tools like Proton Drive or Trezorate.
Right. And they ground that specific requirement in the NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0.
NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yes. And their framework isn't just a checklist. It focuses heavily on risk governance. It operates on the assumption that a breach is always possible.
Because it usually is.
Right. So by mandating end-to-end encryption for the vault, the project ensures that even if the cloud storage provider is compromised, the actual legal evidence remains mathematically unreadable to anyone without the decryption key.
Wow.
A standard unencrypted cloud folder just fails that risk governance test entirely.
Okay, so the technical infrastructure is locked down. The GitHub library is secure from vandalism, and the E2E vault protects the raw data. But
Wow.
here's the ultimate vulnerability is human error.
It always is.
A user can still take an unencrypted document from their vault and manually paste it into the AI prompt. How does the V1.1 execution blueprint force users to actually behave responsibly when they're moving between the vault and the AI?
Well, they address the human element by shifting from advisory warnings to what the term hard gates.
Hard gates.
Yes. These aren't simply suggestions in a terms of service document that everyone just scrolls past and clicks agree. They are operational roadblocks integrated directly into the workflow.
Right. And the first of these is the legal risk gate. The disclaimers regarding the fact that an AI prompt does not create attorney-client privilege, those are unavoidable.
Correct.
Users have to pass a mandatory privacy certification step before the intake form even allows them to view the master prompts. But the gate that really caught my attention was the Rule 11 source gate.
Oh, that is arguably the most critical operational mechanism in the entire blueprint.
Let's unpack that.
In the federal court system, Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure is the standard for truthfulness. When you file a document, you are certifying to the court that your factual contentions have actual evidentiary support.
You can't just make things up.
Exactly. If you fabricate claims, you face severe sanctions.
And the Prompt Commons Project enforces that by building a prompt that requires the user to classify every single sentence of their narrative before the AI is allowed to help them format it.
Which is tedious but vital.
Extremely. The user has to label every assertion into one of 5 categories: record fact, plaintiff testimony, reasonable inference, legal argument, or unsupported.
Just consider the level of mental discipline that requires from someone who is likely highly emotional about their case.
It completely alters the dynamic of a pro se filing. I mean, often citizens representing themselves will write complaints that read like a stream of consciousness manifesto.
They absolutely do.
They blur the lines between what they felt happened, what they assume the other party was thinking, and what the police report actually documents. By forcing the user to manually tag every single sentence, the Rule 11 source gate halts that emotional dump. It literally forces them to separate their anger from the provable record facts.
And what's fascinating here is it acts as an operational barrier against AI hallucinations as well.
Oh, interesting. How so?
The system specifically prevents the user from outsourcing their critical thinking. The AI isn't reviewing the raw evidence and deciding what is true. The prompt forces the human to organize their own reality into a verifiable structure.
And then the AI just formats it.
Exactly. The AI merely formats that structure so the court can actually process it.
That is so smart. And the blueprint takes that same logic and applies it to legal theories with another hard gate called the Monell screen prompt.
Ah, yes, Monell.
For context for you listening, Monell refers to the Supreme Court doctrine that dictates how you sue a municipality.
Right.
You can't just sue a city because a police officer employed by them violated your rights. You have to prove that a specific official policy or a deeply ingrained custom was the moving force behind that violation.
Which is an incredibly high bar and notoriously difficult for pro se plaintiffs to articulate.
Yeah. So the project handles this by forcing the user to explicitly identify the policymaker or the specific custom before the prompt will instruct the AI to analyze the liability theory.
It forces the issue.
It does. If the user just types in, "the city is guilty," the prompt is designed to reject the input. It forces the human to supply the foundational legal logic first.
But because users are required to navigate these rigorous gates, they inevitably need to practice, right?
Right.
They need to run hypotheticals to see how the formatting works. And that introduces a massive vulnerability. How do you create test examples to feed into a public AI without leaking the real data from your private vault?
Which brings us to what I think is the most eliminating part of the V1.2 execution blueprint, and that is the strict definition of the sanitized sandbox.
Yes.
And this connects directly to how every single one of us listening manages our own digital footprint. The project developers make a crucial, unyielding distinction between redaction and generalization.
Those are two entirely distinct concepts that people constantly and dangerously conflate.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about it. How often do we just take a black marker or a digital highlight tool and we cross out a name or a social security number on a document?
All the time.
But we leave so much surrounding context intact that anyone with a basic Google search could reverse engineer exactly who we are talking about. Redaction is simply deleting a name. Generalization is crafting a completely anonymous parallel backstory.
And the V1.2 blueprint operationalizes that exact distinction. Redaction, as defined by Federal Rule 5.2, is the mechanical removal of personally identifiable information.
PII.
Right. You scrub the social security numbers, dates of birth, medical identifiers, financial accounts, but the blueprint warns that Rule 5.2 compliance is vastly insufficient for interacting with a public AI model.
Because the context remains. If I redact my name, but the document still states, the incident occurred at the Bibb County Sheriff's Office on April 4, 2022, regarding CAD case number 2022-00002699. The redaction is useless.
Completely useless.
A third party, or the AI's training algorithm, can easily look up that public dispatch record and attach my identity right back to the prompt.
That is exactly why the second step, generalization, is a mandatory hard gate. You must strip away the case-identifying context and replace it with structural equivalence.
So how does that look in practice?
Well, Bibb County Sheriff's Office becomes County Sheriff's Office. April 4th, 2022 is generalized to simply day 1.
Okay, I see. And the project documentation provides a brilliant example of this using a stolen vehicle CAD module.
Right, the dispatch example.
Yeah. So the raw private evidence read, quote, Kendrick Exum entered ADV, male and female took his VH without permission. In CAD case number 2022 TOS0026989.
It's the raw data.
Right. But the sanitized, generalized version they created for the sandbox reads, Dispatcher A entered that 2 people took plaintiff's vehicle without permission. In CAD case number X.
If you look closely at that transformation, it conveys the exact same structural legal problem, which is how a dispatch record was logged by an official. But it completely severs any traceable link to the original individuals or the specific jurisdiction.
And the project architects took this so seriously that in the final V1.2 master prompt list, the redaction review prompt is designated explicitly as prompt number 2.
Prompt number 2.
Out of 11 total master prompts, the very second thing you do right after classifying your facts is run everything through the sanitization protocol.
Because without executing both steps, redacting the identifiers, and generalizing the contextual narrative, a document simply cannot enter the public prompt space. This 2-step sanitization process is the mechanism that allows the project to build educational hypotheticals for the public without ever treating real citizens as test subjects.
Right. So we had the technical architecture secured. The prompts are subjected to hard gates. The sanitization rules demand both redaction and generalization.
It's a solid system.
It is. But the final hurdle the developers faced before launching V1.2 was the reality of governance. Who actually manages this complex system and, who absorbs the legal liability if a user just ignores the gates and leaks their own data anyway?
And governance is precisely where many ambitious open-source legal projects just collapse entirely.
Yeah.
But the blueprint outlines a very pragmatic Phase 9 governance structure. They establish a strict 3-step review process managed by a 3-person committee.
Who's on it?
A project founder, a civil rights litigation reviewer, and a privacy and security reviewer.
And the rules for that committee are rigid. No prompt goes live automatically, and no single member is permitted to approve their own proposed prompt.
There is always an independent set of eyes.
Always.
Yeah.
But the deeper debate in the documents surrounds the legal entity itself, because they analyze 3 potential structures. Option A is operating as an informal project. Option B is forming a limited liability company, an LLC. And Option C is establishing a 501c nonprofit.
The analysis they provide for Option A is just a stark warning for anyone building in this space.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Whether you're building an AI prompt library, a community app, or an open source tool, you eventually hit the wall of personal liability. The informal project is the fastest way to test a tool, but it carries immense personal risk.
Immense.
The documents are incredibly clear. If you operate informally, there is zero legal shield between the project's outputs and the personal assets of the organizers. If a municipality decides to sue the project for facilitating frivolous lawsuits, the maintainers get sued personally.
Right. Conversely, while Option B and Option C provide that corporate liability shield, they introduce so much administrative friction. Forming an LLC or a nonprofit takes time, it takes money, and regulatory compliance.
It slows down the iterative building process.
Exactly. Which makes the V1.2 launch addendum such a fascinating pivot. After all this exhaustive planning, the maintainers essentially conclude, stop editing the master plan and just start building the prototype.
It is a masterclass in avoiding analysis paralysis.
It really is. They outlined a highly disciplined sequence to thread the needle between speed and safety. They decided to form the 3-person committee immediately, but rather than opening the GitHub repository to the public, they chose to test the entire workflow quietly.
Oh, so a private beta?
Yes. They committed to running a fully sanitized fictional demo module through the system internally to stress test the hard gates. Only after that internal audit would they consider establishing an LLC and actually opening the doors.
Wow. It is an incredible evolution to trace. I mean, we started with a highly sensitive mission, right? Helping pro-se plaintiffs navigate federal civil rights litigation without compromising their data.
A very noble but very risky mission.
Right, and we saw the project establish an ironclad source-locked philosophy, keeping the evidence in an encrypted vault while moving the public prompts to GitHub. We examined how they built hard operational gates, forcing users to categorize evidence under Rule 11 standards and rigorously generalize their narratives.
The redaction versus generalization distinction.
Exactly. And finally, we saw them land on a clear-eyed governance model that acknowledges the severe risks of personal liability.
You know, what stands out to me is how broadly applicable this blueprint is. The principles here extend far beyond Section 1983 litigation.
Oh, for sure.
The strict compartmentalization of data, the forced verification of factual assertions, the critical distinction between redacting a name and generalizing a narrative. This is a foundational framework for interacting securely with generative AI in any high-stakes field.
Exactly. If you are managing sensitive data in healthcare, human resources, or financial services, and you're tempted to just ask an AI to summarize a client document ball, the prompt commons methodology is exactly how you should be structuring your workflow to prevent a catastrophic leak.
It is. However, studying this architecture raises a rather profound question about the future of the legal system that we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, what's that?
Well, think about it. If pro se plaintiffs successfully utilize this prompt commons to generate highly disciplined, perfectly formatted, legally robust complaints, how long until the defendants respond in kind? What happens when municipalities and defense agencies start building their own automated open-source rebuttal commons?
Oh, wow.
A system designed to instantly ingest those perfectly formatted complaints and automatically output perfectly synthesized counterarguments and motions to dismiss.
We would be looking at an automated duel, an arms race of perfectly disciplined AI legal frameworks, just firing formatted arguments back and forth at each other.
Precisely. How does the human element of the justice system even begin to adapt when both sides are armed with perfectly disciplined AI drafting frameworks and require almost zero human drafting?
It fundamentally alters the landscape of how justice is administered and processed. It truly brings us right back to our starting point, that high-speed collision between AI and the law.
Only now the stakes are structural.
Right. Instead of worrying about a messy pileup of privacy leaks, we might be looking at a highly structured systemic transformation of the courts themselves.
It is definitely a lot to ponder.
It is a lot to consider as these tools continue to evolve. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.